love, courage, truth. Glenn Beck.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has finally, definitely, possibly, maybe, temporarily, but for sure, greenlit the travel ban. So are we ever going to get any finality on this? This version of the ban, the third, if anyone is still counting, was issued 4 months ago. It's currently facing ongoing opposition from 2 lower courts in 2 separate challenges. Those cases are going to be heard this week. So the temporary win for the administration might end up being a short celebration, but we're not sure because they decided for sure temporarily, kind of. It's carved in Jell-O. You got to give it to the social justice warrior activists, media, politicians. You guys are good, man. Pretty impressive on how you can take any issue at all, doesn't matter what it is, and turn it into a social justice jihad. Are you pro-life? Well, why do you hate women so much? You pro-religious liberty? What a fascist bigot you are. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall on the strategy table, you know, when I heard people start to, how are we going to spin the travel ban? Okay, guys, what do all these countries have in common? Yeah, they all have a lot of sand. Trump hates desert climates. Nice thought. Maybe we could spin a climate change argument here. Anybody else? All of these areas are conflict zones. You idiot. Stupidest idea you have heard yet. You can't just say that and then not follow it up with an agenda. Here, let me work with you here. These are unstable areas. A prime example of the effects of global colonialism. Boom! There! That's how you get it done. Wait a minute. Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Chad. Wait a minute. There's a lot of Muslims in these areas. Change the word from Trump's travel ban to a travel ban on Muslim-majority countries. Now, we're going to have to find a way to get everybody to forget that North Korea and Venezuela are part of the travel ban as well, and they're not full of Muslims. But if we can just get them to forget, done and done. Back to reality here for a second. If this truly were a Muslim ban, then why the addition of North Korea and Venezuela? Why wouldn't you add in the most populous Muslim countries in the world? Indonesia is 13% of the world's Muslim population, kind of big. In fact, number 1 on the charts. Coming in at number 2 Muslim-populated country is India, followed with Pakistan at number 3 with a bullet. The only country the travel ban the travel ban is including that breaks the top 10 is Iran. So wait, this can't be a Muslim travel ban. I know, Trump said that, but he's dumb as a box of rocks. Why are people so comfortable with putting up with a false social justice agenda, especially when it comes to national security? Maybe it's because the people pushing this will never have to live with the consequences. I mean, how many live in neighborhoods that are going to have illegal immigrants or refugee resettlements? I mean, we find out really quick when we say, oh, okay, well, we're going to resettle them in your neighborhood. How everybody's like, oh, no, wait. Oh, no, hold on just a second. You look at Hawaii. The state has become famous for overruling the travel ban, right? Hawaiians are not going to put up with this. Except since 2010, you know how many refugees Hawaii has accepted? Count them. You can because, well, unless you've lost a finger, 10. That's less than 1%. And none of their legal immigrants come anywhere close to those conflicted areas listed on the travel ban. Oh, but they're all about allowing North Korea to stay on the ban. Yeah, we're gonna ban those guys. You bet. So here's to a little safety. Well, At least until the Supreme Court changes its mind, perhaps later this week.
It's Tuesday, December 5th. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
That's going to be one of our topics today on television at 5 o'clock. This is so astounding how everyone is playing a game with the travel ban. What is the travel ban really about? Honestly, what is it about? Safety, right? It's about, we have to know who's coming into our country. So Donald Trump said, we need 90 days to be able to get our sea legs here, know who's coming into the country, and then we'll reevaluate. Okay. All right. That, to me, that made sense. The left immediately protests. No. We have to have everybody come into the country. We can't ask any questions. Come on, you racists. What is this really about? At this point, Trump has had almost a year. So did you do that 90-day research? I mean, because you should have an answer now. We shouldn't need this temporary ban. We should know the answer. You've had almost a year. Or did you think you only had the budget to be able to fight it in court or do your homework? Now, if I hadn't seen the deficit number, I would say, well, maybe you didn't have the money. You had to pick one or the other. But I know that's not true. So why are we still fighting something where we were only supposed to have it for 90 days so we could do our homework and get our sea legs? You should have that answer now. We should be talking about an entirely new travel ban. The White House should come out and say, hey, by the way, we've done our homework. That's outdated. We've now done our homework, and here's how we want to change this. That's what it should be. Okay, so that's on the right. On the left, this is all about winning. This is about destroying Donald Trump, making sure that you're the biggest pain in the ass so you don't get anything done at all. And if you want some example, could we go to the audio of, what's her name, Joy Behar? This is Joy Behar yesterday. Now, remember, if you didn't want President Obama to succeed, you were un-American. You were a horrible American. We all need the president to succeed. And a lot of us said that. We don't want his policies going forward, but we do want him to succeed because otherwise we all fail, right? That wasn't good enough. Listen to Joy Behar.
So on Friday's show, apparently I was guilty of premature evaluation. I hear they have a pill for that now. To me, it's a mistake. It's not he didn't deliberately put out a false piece of information. Yeah. He made an error. I'm not so sure I want him to succeed at destroying the environment, playing chicken with Kim Jong-un. I'm not so I don't want him to succeed at a lot of things. As you say, we want our president to succeed. No, I don't.
Okay. All right, Joy. And I think this is the feeling on the left. They don't want him to succeed at anything because they hate him so much that is the agenda now. Stop him, no matter what. He could come out and say, I mean, look at his tax plan, for the love of Pete. Look at some of the things that he's doing. How come the gay community hates Donald Trump so much? There's no reason for that at all. Donald Trump is the most gay-friendly president in the history of the United States. Well, except for Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, who we've now recently discovered were gay. But other than those two gay presidents, he is the champion compared to all other presidents. And wait, you hate him? Why? Just because he's on the other side. He's the president.
He's the first president to ever take office without opposing outwardly gay marriage, right? I mean, there's certain things that the gay community does complain about. They're not Mike Pence fans for sure.
Yeah,
but still, I mean,
but that's not Donald Trump. That's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been pro-gay rights long before Hillary Clinton or anybody else, long before. Mm-hmm. Now it's just this hatred because they oppose him on whatever else. You don't have anybody saying, you know what, I agree with him on these things. It's just destroy him. Just destroy him. Well, that's not going to get us anywhere. And that's where the left is. That's where the media is. And they are so twisted at this point in their hatred for him. They'll do anything. They'll do anything. And on the other side, Donald Trump, do you still need the 90 days? Or have you done your homework? Is this now just about beating the press and beating the left? Because I, as one American, would just like to remind everybody involved, this is about national security. That's why this started. We're supposed to know who's in the country. That's what this is. National security. I don't care who wins. Quite frankly, maybe you guys should spend more time on, ultimately, if you keep behaving this way, who's going to lose? This is the same thing that is happening with the Russia investigation. The Russia investigation is the media went crazy on, impeach Donald Trump, impeach Donald Trump, impeach Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is not helping. He's just not helping. But can I just talk to the rest of America? May I talk to the FBI, those who work for the CIA or NSA, those who are working on investigations, and you that actually want a safe, stable democracy? Can I talk to you for just a second? Because the Russia investigation is not about Donald Trump. It is not about Hillary Clinton. It is about Vladimir Putin. Now, there is a 25-page unclassified report that has laid everything out in detail. Have you heard anybody talking about that? Is anybody talking about the 25-page unclassified report that is explaining exactly what Russia is doing? According to the CIA, FBI, and NSA, in this 25-page report, it says, Putin and the Russians have demonstrated a, quote, significant escalation in directness, level of activity, and scope of effort compared to previous operations, end quote. So what is their operation? What is their goal? According to this unclassified document, the goal is, quote, to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process. Let me say that again. To undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process. So how do you do that? Well, you have to make the Democrats not believe in the Democrats anymore. And you have to get the Republicans not to believe in the Republicans anymore. You got to convince everybody that they're all the same, that everybody's corrupt, and there's no reason to vote. And even if you do vote, it's probably rigged. Now, how close are we to believing all of those things? The target was not Donald Trump. The target was not Hillary Clinton. The target was both of them. Both of them. If you look at what Russia under Putin is doing, they were running both a covert and an overt operation. The world has never seen, America has never seen anything like this, even during the Soviet Union. The Russian military intelligence, this is all verifiable. We know this for a fact. The Russian military intelligence, the GRU, led a cyber campaign that targeted members of both parties. Do you remember the talk of Guccifer 2.0 and DCleaks.com? Those were the Russian-run agencies or operations that went in and hacked the DNC. And what did they do? They immediately released those to WikiLeaks. So Russia goes in and they hack the DNC. Well, what was the result of that? The result of that was the Democratic Party turning on itself. Look at all the behind-the-scenes crap. Look what they were doing to Bernie Sanders. I'll never support Hillary Clinton. They got the DNC to start eating itself, and it's still eating itself. Then what? Then the Russians went a step further, and they started using Fusion GPS and pushing the Steele dossier, which was paid for by the Clinton campaign, the DNC, and the FBI. And that campaign, that whole thing, came from Russia. And what did it do? It tried to make Donald Trump look like a traitor to the United States. What did that do? That started everybody fighting. We're eating each other. Oh, and there's one more thing that the Russians did during the last election that is verifiable, and no one wants to talk about it. Not only did they use Russia Today to bring propaganda in, they used third-party intermediaries, basic trolls, to give us all kinds of fake news. Oh, and then one more thing. They started to hack our election. They went in, and this is, we know, the worst hack was in Illinois, and they hacked the state and local level election boards. What they were trying to do was they were trying to get to the where the votes were counted, but they didn't do it because they were thinking, you know, they were thinking like Russians, not Americans. So they targeted the wrong place. Actually, I think they targeted the state level, and everything is counted at the local level. And they got into the state level, and they broke it. What was that trying to do? That was trying to get us to say, somebody hacked the elections. You can't trust the vote. Please, America, please, I'm begging you, stop making everything about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. When it comes to Russia, the bad guy is Putin. And again, his goal is to, quote, undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process. We must not play into his hands.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
We have to stop listening to the television news, quite honestly, on both sides. We have to stop listening to it. We have to stop listening to the people who are telling us supposedly the truth, because they're giving us a spin and agenda that is not true. It's just not true. And so we're looking, okay, what is the truth on the tax bill? What is the truth on the tax bill? Okay, if I said to you that the Republicans have in their tax bill, which is true, a raise of tax on the middle class, and I asked you, Stu, why would they do that? What's the actual answer? A, is that true? And B, why would they do that?
First of all, it's not really true, right?
What do you mean it's not true? It's in the tax bill.
Yeah, it's not. There are parts in the tax. So there are multiple things in the tax bill. For example, the Senate bill has individual tax cuts that expire in, I think it's 2024. So what happens is when the CBO scores these bills, they have to score them out for 10 years. It is a very stupid part of the bill. I'm not a fan of it. But what it does is basically has these tax cuts expire so it looks so they can justify that they stayed within the requirements that they had to use to get only 50 votes instead of 60. So they make up rules, right, to say, okay, we can only get 50 votes, but it has to be within this particular parameter.
So it's not even a tax raise. They're not raising taxes. They're just allowing the cut to expire.
Right. And it's basically an accounting trick. This is not something I'm a fan of, by the way. But if you look into 10 years from now, some of these tax rates, the tax payments will be higher. But everyone assumes that in 7 years they will just, the middle class is going to have their taxes go up and no one's going to want to vote for a middle class tax hike. So what will happen is they'll just continue those tax breaks. Even Obama did that with the Bush tax cuts.
Okay, so there you go. That's the truth. Now listen to how the news has spun this.
What would be the justification in your mind that Republicans would have for raising taxes on lower income people? Because they spend all of their income. So why raise taxes on them?
Listen to Scare.
It really defies comprehension.
Now listen.
Maybe they think that the poor have it so easy that they need to have to pay more taxes to force them to go out and work more.
Stop.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it. I mean, the most logical thing I can come up with is that the GOP just thinks the poor has it so easy that they need to go out and work to pay more taxes. Is there in anyone's imagination, is there anyone that thinks even politically that's anything but insanity?
It's obviously not something he believes is true.
Correct. Okay, next.
The amazing thing is that people seem to be accepting this so meekly and mildly. It's really akin to rape.
It's akin to rape.
Wait, so rape victims are acting meekly and mildly? Is that that's what happens with rape victims? That's a new one. I hadn't heard that before.
This is by the way a former Reagan policy advisor. Okay, so I don't know if he has some sort of mental disorder that has made him forget, or he's changed his mind on a bunch of things, or whatever. And he also is unable now to figure out reality. But this is the kind of stuff that we have to stop. On our side, we have to stop saying it about the left, and the left has to stop saying it about us. And I have no real hope or belief that anybody in the media is going to stop doing that. None. Zero. Nobody in Washington stopped doing that. But you can stop accepting it. We have to stop accepting it and stop saying, okay, yeah, that's probably what's happening, because that's not what's happening.
I think someone who worked in the Reagan administration would really understand that, and that the left referred to tax cuts during that administration as in the exact same way. He just wanted to hurt poor people. He thought they were all welfare queens that didn't want to go out and work. That was never true. It was always, and look at the results of those Reagan tax cuts. The results were incredible for the economy.
Yeah, they actually helped the poor. In the long run, they helped the poor. I mean, if you look at some of the things that were said by the left, I really love the Patton Oswalt tweet after the tax bill was passed in the Senate. He tweets, "There's no America now, not the one we knew. Sorry, feeling real despair this morning."
It's amazing. First of all, the bill hasn't passed. It passed in the Senate. They have to go and they have to basically come up with one version that both the House and the Senate can agree on. They have to pass that. Then it needs to be signed for it to go into effect. Secondly, the rates they're talking about are much higher than they were during Reagan. So, they're slightly cut from the Obama levels, okay, but they're higher than they were during the Reagan times.
And the Bush times.
Yeah, depending on certain rates are higher than then. But it's like, what is the point of this? what is the why?
Well,
can
he's
you
just
get
talking
yourself?
about.
I think it's just those
about
moments.
Real despair. He's got
real despair. I mean, good.
No.
A tax cut. People get to keep more of their own money.
No, listen.
And this is another part of this, Glenn.
I've talked to the people who, we have rescued over in Iraq, the Nazarene Fund, the Christians that were held by ISIS and threatened. They know real despair. They got nothing to like Patton Oswalt. He's got real despair.
I've heard that ISIS might lower taxes as well, and then that's the real tragedy will kick in. But it's like they're talking about this as if it's this incredible transfer of wealth from the rich to the poor. You hear it all from the poor to the rich. Excuse me. You hear it over and over and over again. Massive amounts of money are coming from the poor, and they're going to the rich in this tax plan. Well, ask yourself the obvious question: if the poor had a lot of money to transfer to the rich, why were they poor? They're not, if they have all this money to throw to the rich people, then they weren't poor in the first place. And of course, the truth is they're not transferring any money to the poor. What they're doing is the money they had before was money that came from the rich. It was people who were rich people's money that was being transferred in large amounts to the poor, and now slightly less of it is being transferred, although the poor will still get it, will just go into deeper debt.
And I will tell you, the nouveau rich, not the rich, not the George Soros rich,
no.
Not the Kennedy rich.
Yeah, rich is in quotes in all of these sentences.
Yeah, not the Bill Gates rich, not the Steve
Patton
Jobs
Oswalt rich.
No, that rich keeps their money because that rich takes everything and puts it into a trust. And they're just living off trust funds, okay? That rich, they're never George Soros and Warren Buffett. They're not worried about the income tax. They don't worry about it ever, and it's not because they have so much money they don't notice it. No, they're never affected by it because they have enough attorneys and enough money to go around. They never pay it. Do you know we were talking about All the Money in the World, the new movie that is coming out?
Yeah, that's the one that Kevin Spacey got pulled out of after his accusations. They replaced him with Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, one of the guys who was one of the richest men ever in the world, okay? He was an American. One of the richest guy, John Paul Getty Oil. Mm-hmm. He never paid more than $500 a year in income tax. Those guys don't ever get hit because they don't take it in income. So forget about all of this. They're just helping the rich. No, they're helping they're hurting the new entrepreneur. That's who's getting hurt. The people who are on their way to becoming wealthy. Once you're really wealthy, you got nothing to worry about. Not in America. Here's the truth. 44% of Americans do not pay federal income tax. 44%. The top 1% of Americans currently pay 27% of all federal taxes. 1% pays 27% of all federal taxes. So, how are the poor who are spending all their money? I mean, we don't have more than 44% of our country is poor, right? Because the bottom 44% of our country pays zero in income tax.
And how do you cut that? How do you cut from zero? Their answer is make it a negative rate. Make it so that someone who's paying zero taxes is actually getting money from the government in that.
And that is a transfer of wealth.
Glenn Beck.
It was August 2014 that ISIS came into a small village, and the men were separated from the women, and all the men were executed. They were executed because they were Christians. The women were allowed to live. One of those women was Amal. She, her sister, and her cousin were all taken and transferred to Mosul with all the other women in her village. She was then prostituted to members of ISIS. Her two sisters, their cousin, were given to 3 soldiers of ISIS as a gift. The women were forced to travel with the men. They carried out these activities all through the Nineveh province. In total, they were held captive for almost 2 years. They were just rescued. Eventually, 2 of the 3 captors were killed, leaving the girls with a remaining captor who happened to be injured. The Nazarene Fund was alerted by the Yazidi Rescue Network that the women were there. We sponsored the rescue and returned them to their family. They are now receiving trauma care and are starting the long recovery from 2 years as a slave from ISIS in the Middle East. This is the kind of impact that you are having on Christians and Yazidis and religious minorities all around the world that are being taken, and they're being taken because of their faith. The Nazarene Fund concentrates against ISIS, but we have expanded that now, and soon we will be going into northern Africa as well. You can do a little hashtag, return our children, return our girls, but the hashtags don't work. We've decided to take action. We have a goal of $25 million in the next 12 months, and that will rescue hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women and children who are being held as slaves. We also are going after the organ trafficking market in the Muslim world, and it's nasty. If you would like to make a difference, $5 makes a difference. Pledge an Abraham Lincoln, a $5 bill every month to the Nazarene Fund and become an abolitionist and help us break up this slave trade in the Middle East and all around the world. The NazareneFund.org. The NazareneFund.org.
I think it's one of those things, too, that winds up falling a little bit out of our view because the battle against ISIS is going better, right? Like we've improved our standing when it comes to they've lost territory and everything else. And it kind of feels, I think to me, and I think to a lot of people, because it's not in the news every day, we're not seeing the horror stories every day, that this has stopped. It hasn't.
So it's actually gotten, in some ways, it's gotten worse because now we've replaced ISIS with Iran. And the Iran brigade is now coming in, and they are actually advancing on the Yazidis and the Kurds, where ISIS, we had them at bay with the Yazidis and the Kurds. Now Iran is advancing. So it's a mess, and we feel we have about 18 months to do some real work to save these Christians and Yazidis, and we sure could use your help. We ask that you would help us get the word out and make a donation if you can. The NazareneFund.org. The NazareneFund.org.
Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck.
After 8 years of progressivism gone wild under President Obama, it is startling when something kind of actually conservative happens in the world. Yesterday, President Donald Trump was in Utah to sign proclamations that reduce the size of two national monuments, Bears Ears and the Grand Staircase Escalante. The monuments were created by Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And keep in mind, all that Trump did yesterday was reduce the size of these monuments. He didn't abolish them altogether, and he certainly, much to my chagrin, did not give the land back to the states. However, Trump clearly hates the environment, and I think we all know that. At least that's the predictable mainstream media take on what he did yesterday. He just doesn't care about nature. He wants to open up all the protected land so evil developers can swoop in and build condos. Now, this kind of national monument I'm talking about is not a statue. It's just land that Congress or a president is allowed to set aside and protect as a historic landmark of some kind. Once the land is declared a national monument, it's closed to ranching and mining and recreation or development of any kind. You're not walking on that land anymore. Even if the local community doesn't want the land to be protected as a national monument, it doesn't matter. In fact, often the local community actually needs the land to make things like, a living. The power to create national monuments comes from a provision in the 1906 Antiquities Act. Here we go with the progressives. It's a kind of provision, and it's like crack for progressives. Bill Clinton and then especially Barack Obama went crazy during their presidencies, scooping up ridiculous amounts of land for the federal government as national monuments. Obama declared more national monuments than any other president in history. Congress has only declared 30 monuments in the 111 years since the act. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton declared 41 monuments just between the two of them. Now, Trump is being criticized for his unprecedented use of presidential power to undo the unprecedented use of presidential power by the last president that they didn't seem to have a problem with. He reduced the size of Bear's ears by 85%, the grand staircase by 50%. Nobody was talking about unprecedented use of presidential power to create 265 million acres of new national monuments. The left didn't care because they thought that was heroic. President Trump is not a conservative. This is not the action that I would have taken, but it is a good step in the right direction. He should be applauded for the rare thing that it is, a conservative principle actually put into practice. Local control of land usage makes sense. These federal lands belong to the state, as the Supreme Court has ruled 2 times in history. Federal government just will not give it back. That's what really needs to happen. But Obama's federal land grabs were an absolute overreach, and there is nothing wrong with Trump trying to fix that abuse.
It's Tuesday, December 5th. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Today's a pretty important day in the court system. Today is the day that Jack Phillips goes to the Supreme Court. He is the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop, and he refused to custom design a cake to help celebrate a gay wedding. And as a Christian, he says, I can't advance the message of gay weddings and gay unions because it's wrong according to my religious belief. But he said, I'll sell you cupcakes, I'll sell you cakes, I'll sell you anything. I just can't do the wedding cake. So he has no problem serving gay people. In fact, going another step, he has refused to make cakes for several people that weren't gay, because he said, I don't agree with the message that you want to put on the cake. I'm sorry, you want a topless woman with big bazoombas, made out of icing. I don't do that. I won't do that. Okay? So he has a law. He has
very strong anti-bazoombas stance here.
Very strong.
I hope that's supported by the Constitution. I don't know. I don't know that it is.
I don't know, but we have somebody on the phone that might know. David French. And David, I won't start with the Bazoomba clause in the Constitution, but you wrote a great article, and you said that you're going crazy by the way this is being misrepresented. And Jennifer Finney Boylan is really the head of the snake on this one from the New York Times.
Yeah, it's the most misrepresented Supreme Court case I've ever encountered. And here's how it's being misrepresented. Essentially what people are saying is this cake designers decision not to design a cake that advances a point of view that he objects to is the same as segregated lunch counters. It's the same as refusing medical treatment to LGBT people. I mean, the parade of horribles that you see spun out from this case is absolutely unbelievable. You hit the nail on the head.
Explain to me why this isn't the lunch counter of the 1950s.
Well, it's very easy. He doesn't discriminate on the basis of identity. What he does is he decides not to advance certain messages that he agrees with. So if you're black, white, gay, straight, male, female, and walk into his bakery, you're going to be served. You're going to be served regardless of your identity, regardless of your membership in a protected class. But if you ask him to use his artistic talent to design a cake or any other thing that sends a message that he disagrees with, like in some of these cases it was like a Halloween message, then he's not going to do that. And this is just common sense. This is normal.
Wait.
Stuff.
Is it because the witches had big bazoombas? Is that what it? Or was it?
I've not explored that one.
Okay, all right. Well, you should look into it. I know you're a serious thinker. So she goes on. The New York Times says this, and you just used this word, his artistic ability. She wrote in the New York Times, Mr. Phillips certainly makes nice-looking cakes, but I'm not sure I'd call them artistic expressions, at least not the same sense as, say, Joyce's Ulysses. That argument demands that the court get into the business of defining art itself, a door the justices open at their own peril. Is a well-manicured lawn a form of art by this definition? How about lean corned beef sandwiches? Would they not be art if the court rules to protect icing and buttercream?
That is so unbelievably absurd. Here's what she is intentionally avoiding. The actual cake that the gay couple settled on to celebrate their wedding was a rainbow cake. Now, are you going to tell me that doesn't send a very clear message that a well-manicured lawn doesn't send or a corned beef sandwich doesn't send? She's acting as if the court has to decide the very definition of art itself, when all the court has to decide is, in this case, was he being asked to engage in artistic expression? And this goes to something George Will, sadly and mistakenly, wrote just the other day. He said he made much the same point, that this isn't art. It's primarily food. Are you going to tell me that a wedding cake is primarily food? Is that why people spend thousands of dollars sometimes
I have to
make sure that it's just
my
above Pillsbury?
My father was a baker. But he made wedding cakes, and he spent Fridays and Saturdays making wedding cakes, and they were pieces of art, and they took him forever, and it took him years and years and years of study and practice to be able to practice that art, and people would come from all over to get his wedding cakes. There is a difference. Otherwise, you just get a wedding cake at a Costco.
Right. I mean, all you have to do to know that it's art is like do a Google image search for beautiful wedding cakes, and you'll see amazing things. I mean, so you feel like people are being intentionally obtuse here. Everybody knows when one of the centerpieces of an entire wedding reception is the cake. It is one of the most talked about elements of the entire reception, and yeah, nobody wants it to taste badly, but they're talking about it because of the way it looks, the way it expresses a view of the ceremony, the way it expresses the personality of the couple. All of that is undeniably artistic. And so, again, this is the most misrepresented case I've seen. They misrepresent the nature of what Jack Phillips did, and they misrepresent the nature of his work.
Is this about art, or is this about advancing a message?
Well, in this case, it's both. It's about using your artistic ability to advance a message, and whether or not the state can force you as an artist to use your artistic ability to specifically advance a message, and that would run counter to generations of First Amendment case law, generations that say you cannot be compelled to advance a message that you disagree with.
So most Americans, as you point out, most Americans, if a white customer came in and said, I want a Confederate flag Klan cake. If that was an African-American baker, we would all say, he doesn't have to make that, man. He doesn't have to make that.
Right.
Okay? We'd all understand that, and it would be fine. Now, if that baker said, I'm not serving any white people, and I'm not serving you anything, we still would understand I'm not going to serve you because you're a Klan member. We'd still even understand it, but we would say it was wrong. This is that you can't compare these two.
Yeah, even when the specific art doesn't send a very specific message. Now, remember when Melania and Ivanka Trump were getting ready for the inaugural ball, and all these designers said, I don't want to lend my artistic ability to design dresses for Melania and Ivanka. Well, that was their right. They don't have to use their artistic talents to support a political family they disagree with, even though Melania and Ivanka are women and women are a protected class in public accommodation statutes. So, this time and again, you can come up with these counterfactuals, and time and again, people on the left will go, oh, well, that's different. Oh, that's different. Well, how is it different? And then they'll go, segregated lunch counters, Jim Crow.
Well, they'll say on her, she wasn't born that way. She wasn't born that way.
Well, she was born a woman. She was born a woman, and women disproportionately wear dresses. So, or a person who wants a Confederate flag cake is disproportionately white. It's the same logic that they're using to try to claim their sexual orientation discrimination here. They say, well, it's disproportionately gay people would want a same-sex wedding cake, so therefore it's discrimination on the basis of status, which is false.
So just to make this point, should Melania or someone sue those, I guess you'd be the only one withstanding, sue those people to make the point that, no, you don't have to make a dress for me. If you don't want to, you're an artist. You don't have to make that dress for me.
Well, I do think if this decision turns out against Jack Phillips, people will start to do that. That you will start to see these kinds of lawsuits popping up around the country where, say, for example, conservatives will then try to force progressives to advance their point of view. And then, we're going to get into this mess where we've seen this happen before. And what ends up happening when it's a particularly important sexual revolution issue to the court, often they'll carve out these distortions in the First Amendment. They did one for a long time, and it became known as the abortion distortion, where if you were protesting abortion, magically you would end up with fewer free speech rights than virtually anybody else. What we're seeing in the clash between sexual liberty and free speech is all too often courts are carving out specific exceptions and specific special rules to help advance sexual liberty at the expense of First Amendment freedoms.
Talking to David French. David, I'm fascinated by this use of kind of a classic left-wing thing to say, which is that the courts can't define art. They've been saying that forever, but it's always used the other way when something that might not be art, it's always used to include everything is art. And in this one case, they can't find any art in a beautiful
mason
wedding cake.
jar with piss and a crucifix is art, but this cake is not.
But this cake is not. Isn't that a complete reverse of the way they usually use that argument?
Oh, absolutely. For generations, there have been progressive lawyers arguing to expand the definition of protected speech in the First Amendment, and many times doing so rightfully, many times doing so in ways that have advanced all of our liberties. But now, all of a sudden, this thing that is obviously, to any person, any objective, reasonable observer, is an artistic expression, suddenly it's primarily food.
Well, it's primarily piss. So let me just ask you this last question. We gotta cut you loose. The court is hearing this case today. The swing vote is Kennedy. Kennedy has already ruled in a way that looks like he should rule in favor of the baker. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, if Kennedy holds to some of the language that he wrote in the Obergefell decision, then I think Jack Phillips will win. I mean, in the Obergefell decision, Kennedy acknowledged that there are deep differences, religious differences in particular, about the definition of marriage, and that the Obergefell decision was not designed to force anyone to profess agreement with a definition of a marriage that differs from the courts, that differs from the Obergefell opinion. And in that circumstance, if Kennedy holds to that logic and holds to that reasoning and also holds to his own history of First Amendment jurisprudence, then Jack Phillips should win. But of course, we'll see.
Yeah, it could happen. Aliens could come down and just hold a conference on the steps of the Supreme Court, and it wouldn't surprise me at this point. David French, thank you so much. David French, senior fellow and writer at National Review.
Glenn Beck.
Wow, this is stunning. I don't know where this even came from. Who would have seen this coming? John Conyers is retiring today. He's got some health issues.
Oh no!
And
any other issues to note?
Nothing
pops to mind.
Nothing that would be on Wikipedia later.
No,
nothing.
Okay.
So he's retiring today.
It's time for change. You know,
it
and
is.
I think that's why
he's
retired.
And he's a change maker.
He is.
So he is. He's recommending change, big change.
Well, a different.
So who's going to replace him?
He's almost irreplaceable.
Right.
You'd have to find the right person to replace him.
Who replaces John Conyers? Right? No one, except John Conyers, the third. So
he's endorsing his son for the seat,
because he'll be a lot like his dad. And there is a couple of things that might spring to mind where that might be a problem. Like, for instance, John Conyers,
the third,
the junior.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He has to take a pill to make things, bubble up.
He hasn't had sex drive in 50 years.
Correct.
Saying. Okay.
I would imagine the third, can stand on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably not a good. Maybe not the right choice for that particular seat.
So, but it'll be the choice.
But, totally.
Totally.
We all know how these things turn out in the end. Of course, John Conyers III wins the seat, and he holds it for 50 years.
I think Americans have always liked the Duke and Duchess idea. The prince. And, the king retires and gives his seat to his son. That's such an American idea.
Yeah.
We've always embraced.
We always loved it. Since the 1700s. Big fans.
Yes,
big fans.
Big fans. So we're going to miss you, John. We're going to miss you.
Glenn Beck.
You're listening to the Glenn Beck program.
So today's a big day in the court system. Today, the courts are hearing a plea to be able to sue the President of the United States, the woman who was a contestant on The Apprentice, who absolutely loved Donald Trump. According to her, he asked her to join him in his hotel room when he was in town at the Beverly Hills Peninsula, I believe it was. And she went, and they were supposed to have a conversation, and he made sexual moves towards her, and I believe said, "You don't want me as an enemy." And it was pretty bad what she said. Donald Trump denied it, called her a liar in the press. She is now suing for defamation. The White House attorneys are saying that you can't sue the president. He'll take this up after his term. Just because of the Monica Lewinsky story, I don't think that's going to hold any water. If that does, that means he's going to have to testify and go on record about what happened there, which is how it all began to fall apart for Bill Clinton. But we'll see. Personally, I think that is the way this is going to. That's what's going to lead next year. I think is that Russia alone. I don't think is going to be the only tact from the left. Now we have Austin Peterson on because there's another case. We were just talking about it. The wedding cake case is in front of the Supreme Court today, and they're hearing whether or not a man's art has to be used to further someone's agenda. If you have to do work for somebody that you disagree with. This bakery has served gay people, everybody. He has no problem. He'll sell them anything. He just will not decorate the wedding cake for their service. They say that's wrong. He says, I have a long history of, I won't, for instance, he won't do Halloween cakes because of his religious fervor. He doesn't agree with Halloween, so he doesn't make those cakes. Nobody's suing about that. We'll see what happens with the Supreme Court. I wanted to get a libertarian on because I wanted to get somebody who I know agrees with gay marriage and would agree that you don't have to make a wedding cake to make the case here of why this is right to be able to have the freedom on both sides. Austin Peterson, welcome to the program.
Glenn, thanks for having me back.
You bet. I wanted you on as you wrote back when we asked you. You wrote back and you said, I have to say, it's a hell of a time being a secular constitutional conservative, running as a Republican, and defending religious freedom for people who think I'm some sort of spawn of Satan myself. But as Glenn Beck told me in our interview last year, the only time defending liberty matters is when you defend the liberty of someone who disagrees with you. So talk to me about your position.
Right. Well, that's what you encapsulated it all right there. I mean, the thing is that I think that he should bake the cake, but I would never force him to do so. But the thing is that we're talking about religious liberty and gay marriage when in reality, the heart of this argument is the issue of private property. The question is, should any business have the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason? Well, they should, but that's not the world that we live in. And now we even the best laid plans of mice and men can go wrong because what we've done is we've created these protected classes, and everyone who is 40 years of age and older is a protected class. But if you're a white male, 40 years of age or under, well, you're out of luck. So I think that the problem is that now we're going to get into the question of whether or not the gay marriage question is under threat. I think it's not. Justice Kennedy is going to be, I think, the crux of this, and the decision is going to come down to him. He did vote for Obergefell, but he's also found an expansive definition of free speech and religious liberty, which I think this clearly falls under no one should be forced to bake the cake. And that's why I asked Gary Johnson last year, should you force a Jewish baker to bake a cake for a Nazi wedding? Well, of course, nobody believed that except for Governor Gary Johnson for some reason. I mean, even Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders didn't believe that. Because most people don't understand where these laws came from, and that's the real problem, is the sort of historical illiteracy that we have in the United States.
Can you touch on that? Where did this law come from?
Absolutely. Well, in the 1960s, we had a stain of racism and Jim Crow. Local governments were cracking down on blacks, and the federal government had to step in and say, according to the 14th Amendment and according to the Constitution, you cannot abridge the privileges and immunities of certain classes of people. The Interstate Commerce Clause was used to say that people who are of color should be able to stay at hotels. People of color should be allowed to sit at lunch counters. And in the context of that time, it absolutely makes sense why the Civil Rights Act was passed. But now, because of the Title II section of that definition, Title II stated that businesses are not private, businesses are public, and you are not allowed to discriminate. So now we have these discrimination laws that are being used for the reverse of what they were intended.
Right,
but the discrimination laws. Go ahead.
But they're not consistent. I don't know if you remember the coffee shop owner in Seattle that kicked the anti-abortion people out of his coffee shop. They weren't handing out flyers or anything. Somebody came in and had a flyer that they had and said, "Hey, these are the guys who are passing out these anti-abortion flyers." The guy wigged on them, called them all sorts of names, and they said, "We're not passing it out. We're not talking to anybody here. We're just having coffee. I don't want you in my store." And he literally chased them out. It was a really ugly scene. I believe he has the right to do that, but I don't even think the court would stand against him on that one. But they certainly will with a bakery, because we're playing favorites now.
Right, and the problem, of course, is that both sides don't seem to quite understand the true position of liberty in this one, and that's the private property. And, of course, the problem with defending liberty has always been that you end up defending scum or miscreants or the people like, cigarette smokers who want to smoke inside bars and things like that. So, unfortunately, you have to stop creeping tyranny in its crib before it can grow and metastasize to what it's become. And again, no secret that the left hates Christians. They hate white males, and they will do anything they can to use the law to go and oppress those groups that they despise. Unfortunately, it will get used against them. It will come back and bite them in the butt. So I think that if we were to look at the true liberty position and say that anyone should have the right to refuse service, that doesn't mean that we condone it. I don't condone racism. I do think that gay couples should have the right to get married. Honestly, the true position is that government shouldn't be in a marriage business at all. But unfortunately, we can't have that. So we have to force governments to compel them to not abridge privileges and immunities.
So how is this going to come back and bite them in the butt? How, if you are a liberal, do you not see what's coming? What is coming?
Well, I think that the Christians will get fed up and they will turn around and they will claim discrimination against them, and there will be court cases where where a gay baker doesn't want to bake the cake for the Christian wedding, and then they'll get sued and they'll come back. And unless the court finds in favor of freedom now, which they absolutely should, the Department of Justice, the Trump administration have issued plenty of court briefs. Many of the more libertarian legal institutes, I believe Institute for Justice as well, has filed legal briefs, friend of the court briefs. So this is the chance now to turn the tide against statism. And it's not to say that discrimination isn't good. We don't have to condone discrimination. I don't think you should discriminate, but you should have the right to discriminate, because the problem is that everybody thinks that we should force people to be good. Government's job is to force people to be good. I think that the role of government is to make us free, not to make us into better people. That's what society is for. Neighbors, families, friends, churches. That's what this is all about. And frankly, right now in Missouri, where I'm running for the Senate, these Missouri voters are waking up to this, and I think that we're going to get a change. I think the court will find in our favor.
It's really an amazing thing to watch, Austin, talking to Austin Peterson, who is running for Senate in Missouri. The New York Times talked about trying to give this wide definition of art, as if being a baker is not art. Because this situation, and it's a little bit different than some previous cases where people were arguing more on the basis of religious freedom. Really here, this case seems to be more argued on the basis of, can you compel an artist to advance a message that they don't like? And they talk, and we've had these situations with photographers, for example, that I don't know how you would deny would be art, but they still seem to push back against this. One of the examples the New York Times uses is a well-manicured lawn a form of art by this definition? And they're trying to ridicule the idea that a cake could possibly be art. But if you ever watch a sporting event like the All-Star game in Major League Baseball, they'll carve in, symbols, artistic symbols into the lawn as they do this. Even cutting a lawn can be artistic. If a person,
let me ask it this way: if you were Mexican heritage, mm-hmm. and you were in San Francisco, and the owner of the lawn said, "I want you to build the wall in an artistic way," right. Which side would the progressives argue for?
Exactly. I mean, there's so many inconsistencies, but frankly, I think both left and right have inconsistencies.
Yes.
The New York Times came out and said that Jack Phillips, who is the defendant in this case, is an artist. It's not a stretch. He uses his skills to make wedding cakes, and they are works of art. But the adjutant, David Mullins and Charlie Craig, they are saying this is a civil rights issue. But nobody is taking away their right to go to the cake baker next door. I mean, it's not like there isn't competition, and people just don't have faith in freedom. They don't believe that a cake baker next door is going to say, "Hey, well, they're losing business. I'm going to set up a shop next door." Or what about a boycott? What about the freedom of people to say, "Well, I don't like how this business operates, and I will choose not to go there," so they lose business? But people just don't have faith in freedom anymore. I do. I still believe in freedom. That's what I'm fighting for, and that's why I'm running for office again.
So how's that going to work out for you, Austin, and in Missouri?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not going bad. I mean, obviously, I'm not the favorite in this race. I'm not the Mitch McConnell pick, but we have raised quite a bit of money. We've got thousands of volunteers. I've gotten some good endorsements. People like Ben Shapiro have told people to support me, the true conservatives. And what's strange is that even though I tried to run against them last year, a lot of the Trumpers like me too. But I think they kind of like me because I tell it like it is. And even when I disagree with them on certain issues like the wall, perhaps, or maybe the troop surge in Afghanistan recently with the president, I do agree with them on most of the issues, and they do like me. I mean, the president said some nice things about my opponent the other day. But then the Trumpers started calling into the radio show and saying, "Hey, Austin's our guy." And I was like, okay, well, this is going to get interesting pretty soon.
It is a wild world we live in now.
It's nuts.
Austin Peterson running for the U.S. Senate in Missouri as a Republican, a strong defender of freedom and a libertarian. And if you are in Missouri, I strongly recommend that you check out his record and see if you don't agree with him more than you disagree. If you are a constitutionalist, I think you're going to like a lot of what he has to say. Austin Peterson, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
You bet.
If you want to get involved with Austin's campaign, you can go to austinpeterson.com. He's on Twitter at AP4Liberty.
Glenn Beck.
We have a really great hour coming up for you. Next hour, we have some laughs, an amazing story of really, I think, you say this a miracle, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean,
in some ways, it's really bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a new book out called Left Standing, and it's the story about a guy who was in the Boston bombing, the Paris bombing, and the Brussels bombing. So he experienced 3 terror attacks, like in the hospital with his whole face like, he's the Invisible Man because he had, 3rd-degree burns on his face. I mean, really, really bad. He's there at all 3. Now, you kind of think, okay, dude, what is the deal? It's the reason why we didn't have him in the studio. He's going to be on the phone. We don't want to be anywhere near him because the luck of this guy. But his faith is what has brought him through all of this. And I can't imagine. Wouldn't you say, Stu? What is? I mean, hello?
It would be hard not to really question things after being involved in. You're in three terrorist attacks.
You'd be like,
right
why
there.
Me? What is the deal? What is the deal? Why?
And maybe this is the deal, right? Maybe telling the story and talking about that struggle is the deal. Maybe that's why he was there in those 3 places. I would like to hear his perspective on it because I'm sure he's done a little bit of thinking about what his life is supposed to mean after going through 3 terrorist attacks.
Really amazing. I think I heard this story, when it first came out. I heard, this guy has been, but I don't think I've heard the story told where he's at the bombing of Boston, and then he's in Paris, and he's involved in that one. And then in Brussels, he's standing there, and he's blown up and burned up. You'd be like, imagine being his parents.
It's got to be an incredible thing to go through.
Incredible. Great story of faith. He's going to be on with us here in a second. It's actually a new book called Left Standing. Billy Hollowell is a good friend of ours and formerly with TheBlaze is one of the co-writers.
Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck.
A $750 birthday cake. How many times have you had one of those? Or you've spent $13,582 on your Beyonce concert. Or you spent $15,000 on a box so you could go see the Jaguars. Or, I remember when I went to the Barack Obama second inauguration, and I took a bus trip from Jacksonville to Washington, D.C., and it cost me $89,852. These are just some of the ways former U.S. Representative Corrine Brown used the funds from her charity, One Door for Education. The $800,000 that was donated to the charity under the pretense that it would be used for scholarships was actually used, for Beyonce concerts and stuff. Of the $800,000, only 2 scholarships were ever awarded, and they added up to, carry the one, $1,200. Wow. She served 25 years in Congress. She is now going to serve some time in prison, 5 years. During the sentencing, the federal judge called Brown's actions especially shameless. He continued, said this was a crime born out of entitlement and greed, committed to ensure a lifestyle that was beyond her means. Think of the good that Corrine Brown could have done with that money instead of throwing lavish birthday parties with $800 cakes or gone shopping. Think of the children she could have helped. Now her legacy is one of avarice, greed, and unnecessary Beyonce concerts. A legacy that is far worse than even Ebenezer Scrooge.
It's Tuesday, December 5th. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
I want to introduce you to a guy named Mason Wells. Mason was an Eagle Scout and awarded a trip to Paris, France. He served as a missionary over in France. He's now in the United States Naval Academy. But I'm not talking to him about those things. That's not what got our attention. What got our attention is Mason Wells is a guy that happened to be at the Boston bombing, the Paris terrorist attack, and was significantly injured in the Brussels attack. I don't know of anybody else that, besides people who might have been involved, were at all 3 locations. And I can't imagine what it must feel like and how many times you must say, why me? There's a new book out, authored by Mason and a good friend of the program, Billy Hollowell, called Left Standing, and it's about his faith and what he has gone through. Mason, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Glenn.
So, we were talking about this, and, it's one of the reasons why we wanted just to have you on the phone and not here at the studio. You have really bad luck. Tell me about being in 3 terrorist attacks.
Oh, I think I actually have pretty good luck that I'm still here. My first experience with terrorism was at the 2013 Boston Marathon, and my mom was running the marathon. Me and my dad were there to support her, and me and my dad were actually 50 meters away when the first bomb went off at the finish line. So being young at the time, that was scary for me. Fast forward, now I'm serving as an ecclesiastical missionary in France, and I was actually in the city of Rouen at the time of the Charlie Hebdo shootings, and then in the city of Calais at the time of the Paris attacks. And to have those things go on in the headquarters of our mission, a place where we always were on the streets that we proselyted, it left me with a lot of questions and a lot of reflections. And then I was 10 feet away when the first bomb went off in the Brussels airport, and that one there put me in the hospital for a good 2 months.
Yeah, we saw you. We saw pictures of you all wrapped up. You had 3rd-degree burns to your face. Your leg had some contraption. Trying to piece it back together. You were seriously injured there. What was going through your head?
Well, when I was first injured in Brussels, I actually thought I had died when the first bomb went off. If you can imagine that you're standing there for a moment, and suddenly everything explodes. That's what was happening to me, and I didn't know what was going on. When I opened my eyes a couple seconds after the blast and looked around, there was no one standing but me. Everyone else had been knocked down to the floor. My friends had been knocked out. and I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me. So I made my way out of that airport, one step after another, on a ruptured Achilles tendon, completely severed, with shrapnel on my legs, burns to my hands and to my face. And when I got out of the airport and my leg collapsed, I was kind of faced with, these two roads in front of me. I could either embrace bitterness, embrace anger, embrace frustration, or make the best of what was going on and choose to have hope that I would come out of this all right. And I chose the latter. So I was faced with a very bleak future, quite literally laying in a pool of my own blood on that sidewalk. But through the grace of God and through some mental decisions I made, I'm still here.
So what was the darkest moment here? Did you have a real struggle in faith, or were you prepared spiritually to meet some of these things?
Well, I think that God prepares all of us for the things in our lives. I was blessed that day to be comforted when I was injured, but I did experience a lot of things afterwards that led me to questions about my faith and led me to develop a deeper faith. It prompted me to ask, why do bad things happen to good people? Where is justice in all of this? What is God's plan for me? And those sorts of questions, those questions of the soul, they're things that take time. And, some of my reflections, of course, from the book, but a lot of, what I've learned about adversity and getting through trials came during my darkest moments. And there definitely were those dark moments.
So what did you come to what was the conclusion? Why is this happening? Why does God, where is God? I mean, you're serving a mission. You're blown up. And if I'm not mistaken, weren't you going home? Weren't you on your way home?
I was about 4 months away from going
4
home.
months away.
Taking another missionary off.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was pretty close.
All right. So, I mean, what was the conclusion? Why does God let this happen?
Well, I've asked myself many times why God allowed this to happen to me and why I'm alive when other people that were farther away from the bomb were killed. But ultimately, I've come to find out for myself that God allows adversity to happen in our lives, knowing that it will make us stronger, knowing that we have a chance to come out on top, to allow these things to change us for the better or for the worse. One thing I've learned for sure is that God is there when we're willing to look for him and ask for his help. And ultimately, choosing to have hope amid the challenges in our lives is the difference between finding peace and being bitter about what's going on. Honestly, that I think just having a positive attitude, making every single day a new day and realizing that every single day was a chance for me to change, that mindset is what carried me through my recovery. And I can positively say that, the line that divides success from failure is attitude much more than it is outcome.
So I just told a story yesterday about Corey ten Boom, who had a hard time forgiving and extending love to the people that, in particular, one of the guys who was a guard in the showers. And she really, really had a hard time after the war forgiving him and loving him. Did you have, how do you feel about the people that, have brought so much death and destruction?
That's a deep question. It's a good question. Ultimately, I've forgiven the people that did this to me, but it doesn't make what they did permissible. And, I've actually prayed to God for them, that God would have mercy on them. But I know very well that God is a God of mercy and a God of justice. And I hope they can go on living in the next life the best they can, given the guilt that they'll undoubtedly bear. But that being said, just because I've forgiven, it doesn't make what they did okay. It's not permissible to do these things. It's the epitome of evil. What they did was evil. And I think that you can embrace forgiveness and also draw a hard line between good and bad.
Mason, if you were to win an all-expenses paid vacation, would anyone go with you?
Besides Tom Hanks.
You know what? I'm not, it's crazy as it sounds. I mean, I'm not scared to travel the world. I'm not scared to take public transportation,
That wasn't the question.
I mean,
the question is anyone else comfortable with you being around?
I mean, if you were to give me an all-expense paid trip to Tunisia or something, I don't know if I'd go there right now.
Right,
Maybe
okay, all right.
bit, but I mean, I'm not. We can't let these things hold us back. We can't let these moments and these acts define our lives.
Did you at any time have a moment where you're like, I'm cursed, or there's something wrong, or what am I doing wrong, or I'm afraid to go places? Was there any time that started to happen to you?
Well, I have to admit, there was a time, I think it was about 3 days after I was injured in Brussels, that I was sitting in bed and I just kind of looked up and I just asked, really? Again? I guess I didn't learn what I needed to do the first time. But,
right. Okay, you're clearly telling me something. What is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously, I've thought about that. I choose to focus less on the past, as to why these things happened, and focus more on the future, just making every single day a great day, and making every single day a day I want it to be. Because, I'm still here, and I'm grateful to be alive.
Mason Wells, author of Left Standing. Thank you so much. Best of luck. And
thank you so much for having me, Glenn.
Alert me if you're ever on a flight and you see me. Alert me. I need to get off.
Will do.
Thanks a lot, Mason. Merry Christmas.
The book is Left Standing, the miraculous story of how Mason Wells' faith survived the Boston, Paris, and Brussels terror attacks. It's an amazing story. Mason Wells...
What? Osama bin Laden survived all of them.
Well, no, he didn't actually.
Actually, no,
he didn't
right.
actually. But that's an amazing story. The Brussels. I mean, there's been so many of these attacks by largely Islamic extremists around the world. The 2016 Brussels bombings, 32 killed, over 300 injured. You'll remember the security camera tape of the guys walking through the airport.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's been so many of these, particularly in Europe, and it's amazing that this
10 feet away from the bomb.
And ISIS did claim responsibility for that afterwards, to be able to muster the strength of will to forgive ISIS, while obviously acknowledging what they do is not right. It's an amazing story. It's Left Standing.
Glenn Beck.
So I'm worried about revisionist history. I think many in our audience are, that, precious things are being lost over decades. But there's a new pattern emerging that is even more terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, quickly on this Roy Moore thing, the thing that's concerning is it's getting harder and harder to put together a logical sequence of events to justify all of his behavior and excuses. There's another...
because of him.
Yeah.
Not because of the stories, but because of him.
There was another person who came out with a card that was written to them, one of the accusers, that had a very similar signature to what was on... it was in the yearbook. But this part is... I have a real problem with. Here is Roy Moore at an event just the other night talking about these accusers.
Let me state once again, I do not know any of these women, did not date any of these women, have not engaged in any sexual misconduct with anyone.
Now, that is a blatantly false statement. Okay.
No, what evidence do you have that that's blatantly false? He just said he doesn't know them, he never dated them, and he never had sexual relations with any of them.
My source on this would be Roy Moore. Here he is talking to Sean Hannity in his interview after the accusers came out.
I do not remember speaking to a civics class. I don't remember that. I do not remember when I seem to remember knowing her parents, that they were friends. I can't recall specific dates because that's been 40 years, but I remember her as a good girl. But neither of them have ever stated any inappropriate behavior. She didn't say anything that they...
Well, she said, but do you remember ever going on a date with her? She said that you asked her out on the first of several dates, but nothing progressed beyond kissing.
I don't remember specific dates. No, I do not. And I don't remember if it was that time or later. but I do not remember that. No.
But you know her, but you never dated her ever. Is that what you're saying?
Know her, but I don't remember going out on dates. I knew her as a friend. If we did go on dates, then we did, but I do not remember that.
Okay.
So he knows her.
And in earlier in the interview, he says both of their names,
Yes.
Gloria Thacker Deason and Debbie Wesson Gibson. He mentions specifically those
and
two.
he said, I remember their moms. I talked to their moms.
Remember talking to their moms. And
Right.
Debbie Wesson Gibson is the person who has just come up with the card with Roy's signature on it, the one he said he knew. And now
he
he's
says,
saying he never knew. He's saying now both of the people he admitted to knowing, he doesn't know.
So this is really weird because it always goes the other way. I didn't know them. I didn't know them. More evidence comes out. Okay, I did know them, but I never did any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it normally goes.
Normally, yeah.
This is, okay, I know them, but I never did any of those things. To, I didn't know them. I've never even heard of them. I don't know them. I don't know who they are. Billy Bush, the tape, the president, yeah, okay, I apologize. That was, locker room talk. To now, I never said that. That was not my voice on tape. What?
Yeah, you're right.
What?
It doesn't normally go that way. Usually goes the other way. I mean, look, I fully expect Roy Moore to win that race. I don't think he's going to lose it unless there's another
people
huge
of Alabama
bombshell. Yeah, I mean that's how their system works, right? He's not being accused of a crime. He's saying of criminal. It would have been a crime at that time, but it's long past. He's not going through legal proceedings now. It's just a matter of whether you believe him or not. And I hate that
standard. Would you vote for him?
I wouldn't have voted for him anyway.
Yeah,
I liked Mo Brooks quite a bit, and would have been very happy with him as the candidate, as we talked about at the time.
Yep.
He was
and
really good conservative.
You've got a candidate that's going to cause you real danger. It's not. This is not a grand slam here. This is not an easy thing to happen.
Yeah, but I do expect him to win. The polls are fairly close there, but I don't think it's going to wind up being close unless there's another big bombshell that comes out. It's possible. If something were to really prove him wrong. But honestly, I would be stunned America in 2017 did not put this guy in office. I'd be stunned.
We would take him out if he was the head of 7-Eleven, but we will put him in to be in the Senate.
Glenn Beck.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Welcome to the program. A couple of things that we're watching. First of all, we got to get the writer of the article that said that doing an interview with Pence's wife. Pence's wife said that Donald Trump was, what did she call him?
Vile and reprehensible. But I think she meant that with love.
Yeah,
don't you feel that way?
Yeah. Now they're distancing themselves from that and saying that's not true. I mean,
what are they going to say? Yeah, my wife hates him. Oh my gosh, she can't stand that guy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she thinks he's a pig. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, they
that's
have to
good.
deny that.
Yeah. Here's another thing. This is where, to me, this is where I think this Russia thing is going to get bogged down and going to bear possible fruit. If you are looking to bury Kushner or Trump, the one of the guys who was the guy who was gagged by the government, one of the informants on the Russian deal, said where you really need to look into collusion with Trump is in the business dealings. You'll find it in the bank records. So it looks like the FBI has just subpoenaed Deutsche Bank for financial information on Donald Trump and his kids. Deutsche Bank has already had rulings against them and faced severe fines because they have been convicted of money laundering for the Russians. And the day, let's see here, was it the day before, several weeks ago, let's see, blah, 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 1 month before Election Day, Jared Kushner finalized a $285 million loan from Deutsche Bank as part of a refinancing package. The Deutsche Bank has already received $630 million in penalties because it's involved in a $10 billion Russian money laundering scheme that involved the banks in Moscow, New York, London. Apparently, that's where a lot of bones are buried and bodies are buried. We'll see. But they are now moving into the banking of Donald Trump.
I tend to believe most of this stuff is, a lot of it's overblown, at least. But do you remember one of the main pitches during the campaign was Trump saying, if you put Hillary Clinton in, it's going to be nonstop investigations for the infernal. That was like a selling point.
Yeah.
I guess at this point, any president who's in there is going to be, investigated over something or be in the middle of some controversy.
I don't think Hillary would be. I don't think Hillary. I'm not sure they would have done this against Hillary. I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
Probably. I mean,
well, she'd have the press on her side, so
makes
that would
it easier.
call off some of the dogs, I think.
So it depends on who she had as vice president. If they liked the vice president, it was like if she would have had Cory Booker as her vice president, they would have fed her to the dogs. They would have fed her to the dogs. But maybe that's just me. Welcome to the program, Pat Gray.
Also, John Conyers is has announced his retirement as of today.
No.
So I mean,
who saw that coming?
Nobody. I don't think anybody saw that. Right
now, he's
in the hospital.
He's retiring because of his health.
This has nothing to do with the sexual allegations.
The what?
The sexual harassment allegations.
I don't even recall those.
Yeah,
what were those?
it's just vile, awful people saying mean things about John because they don't like him.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But he's 88 years old, and some would say maybe it's time to. Maybe it would have been time 20 years ago to go. But
really?
Yeah, he called into a radio show in Detroit, the Mildred Gaddis show.
Oh, huge! I'm
guessing Mildred is not a millennial.
The Mildred Gaddis
Who was
show?
the last baby ever named Mildred? It's got to be at least 60 years ago, right?
That name is huge in Silicon Valley.
They stopped with that name right after they stopped with Gertrude, and I think they retired both of those names.
Mildred
Gaddis. Apparently, she's a big deal in Detroit, so he called in on her show and said, as of today, he's retiring, and he endorsed his son. What a surprise! He endorsed his son for his seat.
That's so good.
It's like, all right, I'm leaving, but my hand puppet is staying. All I'm going to do is stick my hand up its butt and tell it what to say, but you won't see my lips move. So,
wow, I don't hear this. I don't hear you say this about Prince Charles when, people talk about Queen Elizabeth dying. She's going to hand it to her son.
No,
that's actually a different system of government.
Yeah. It has actually nothing to do with the system of government anymore.
No, in fact, I think we fought against that system of government.
Even England has basically overturned that form of government.
England is even saying, we don't want Prince Charles. That's
but
bad.
that only happened 200 years ago, so I'm glad they still pretend.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to stop pretending that they have power.
I mean, John Conyers was almost alive when it happened.
And he was in office.
Think of that. He was halfway there.
Yeah.
In the beginning of his life, we're almost halfway.
It's
Crazy.
Incredible to think about.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
88 years old. What was it? How many terms was it? 50?
27.
27
terms.
I mean, it's unconscionable. And then what does he want to do? He wants to, quote unquote, retire so he can essentially extend his family's reign.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Yes.
It's ballsy.
It's as if we hand this down from. I mean, they still have to elect the guy, but somebody's going to be appointed, right? Until they have a special election.
It will be John Conyers' son.
Yeah, John Conyers III.
Just like Jesse Jackson Jr.
And the way they even advertise these races. I remember when we lived in Pennsylvania, I used to drive to these studios the same way every day, and I would go through this one area that had during an election, and it would just be vote number 7. Like, not even telling you what the issue was, not even telling you what the name was, nothing. It was just vote number 7. So people would see signs and vote number 7. They get in front of the ballot, it would say number 7. They did say vote number 7, so I better vote for number 7.
Wow! Did you ever look it up to see what number 7 was?
I don't remember.
But did you vote for number 7?
Of course, obviously, the sign said vote number 7.
But there was no other choice.
Are you not going to do what you're told by the sign? No.
But I think like when you go to when these this voting constituency is going to go to the polls, they're going to see a name that's familiar. It's not maybe it's just three instead. Half of them won't even know that it's not the same John Conyers.
Yeah.
And that is just I honestly think. Because people talk about ideology is totally backseat to party. But honestly, I think party even is backseat to name. If you have that name that people recognize, they don't care what the hell you do. They don't care if you switch parties 900 times. They don't care what it is. If you're famous and they know you, you're going to get votes.
Well, that's why dead people have been elected. Wasn't that Missouri where that happened? Years ago?
Yes.
Dead
that was,
person won the election.
Against John, wasn't that John Ashcroft?
I think
was running against
John Ashcroft.
Was it Callahan? Or
so was,
Callahan.
It
was Callahan.
It was. His wife served instead, right?
It's like, same last name.
They just knew his name. The fact that he wasn't breathing anymore didn't mean anything to the voters.
He'd probably be better now that he's not breathing.
Probably.
I mean,
He'll
wait a minute.
damage.
Hang on. Let's think about this.
That's not that bad when you think about it.
It's not bad. If we just elect a Congress full of dead people, we might get better laws.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot less offensive. I'll tell you that.
At least it would be
I could watch
constant.
C-SPAN all day long.
Be really quiet, fall asleep to it. It would be wonderful.
If they would just wheel one of them up once in a while, just to prop them up.
Somebody who's on an iron lung, not quite dead yet, but just about to die.
No, I want them dead.
Okay.
I want them
All
dead.
right.
I want them dead.
And to be clear, we're talking about people who are previously dead to be elected.
I say bring back... Charlie McCarthy or whatever that guy whose name was.
Let's go back to the founders, man. If we can pick anybody, let's go back to the founders.
We want to have some of the...
Let's get Washington,
I want the
Jefferson.
famous ones, too. I want those guys, sure. But I also want the famous guys. I would like, who was the guy that, beat the other one with the cane?
Sumner?
Yeah, that was Charles Sumner, but the guy
beaten.
who was the guy who beat him? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I want
either.
that guy. Because you don't know. Maybe he'll do it again. You don't know.
And this time it'd be on video. It'd be
and imagine if
viral.
Imagine if he's serving, and one day he shows up and he's got a cane, and then you're watching, and the next day he's just like a foot closer to somebody else, and you just move him every day,
like Weekend at Bernie's.
Right, exactly
the
right.
Congress edition.
Yeah,
I like it.
But they're in that position every day, so it's like a Macy's Christmas Day window. You know what I mean? Where every day C-SPAN goes on, and they're all in a different position. And you're like, what happened? They only do laws when we're not watching. It's like Elf on a Shelf.
They'd screw up a lot less. It would be
great.
I'm all over it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have. I mean, the system, government in many states, Texas being one of them, they don't show up all that often. That's good.
Every other year.
Yeah, every other year they show up, vote on a couple things.
How long have we said that the National Congress should do what Texas does? Just stay away every other year.
Can you imagine how great it would be? That's the way it was.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. This was not a full-time job. You were there for a few months every other year.
And you had a job where you worked around other people.
Yeah.
And so you got to hear and stay in touch with people because you were there with them.
The reason why they really liked Washington, D.C. is because it was so miserable and it was so full of malaria that they were like, nobody's going to want to stay here. Nobody's going to want to stay here because it's just miserable.
It was a swamp.
Right.
I'm not sure the American people are ready for more personal time with John Conyers, though. I don't think that's a good idea for them. I think maybe...
Why? What could possibly go wrong?
Glenn Beck.
Welcome to the program. Glad you're here. Today at 5 o'clock, we're going to go in depth on a couple of things. First, the travel ban. The Supreme Court has said, yep, we're good with a travel ban. What? We might change our mind later this week. So it's nonsensical what is happening. We're going to break it all down for you. And then I want to talk to you about what the president did yesterday in Utah. It was a good step in the right direction by overturning the huge land grab that Barack Obama did with Bears Ears. in Utah just seized all this land. We have some pretty shocking inside information on that that we will give to you. And what should happen, what we should be cheering for, is not necessarily what happened yesterday, but it was a step in the right direction, and we'll give you that at 5 o'clock. Also, we'll give you an update on the Supreme Court hearing on the gay baker, or the straight baker who didn't want to make a gay wedding cake. A very lefty kind of reporter just left the Supreme Court and just tweeted this.
That things did not go well, apparently, for that side of the argument. It was someone from Think Progress who said the argument went terribly for the pro-equality side. Kennedy is almost certainly going to side with the gay baker. The anti-gay baker was the way I believe he put it. So I would not agree with that analysis, but it's a good sign if he thinks it went badly, because this is not about whether you like gay people or anything like that. It's about the freedom of being able to do with what you want with your day.
And your talent, and what you have to endorse if you are religiously against it.
But there's limits to freedom, I think we all recognize that. I mean, for example, this guy in Illinois, he had a Dunkin' Donuts vanilla latte flavored Pop-Tarts he was eating. And he says, you guys ain't from Illinois if you don't put mustard on your Pop-Tarts.
No, you're not from Earth. You are. You need to be in prison.
Right. It's interesting you say that, because
you're right. I was thinking, when you said, there are some limits to freedom, I thought, I can't think of really any real big ones.
Now you can, right?
Yeah, mustard on Pop-Tarts, you bet. On what kind of Pop-Tart?
On a Dunkin' Donuts vanilla latte Pop-Tart, which I did not know existed. Now, Pop-Tarts, the official Twitter handle, actually responded and says, can you guys handle this, to the Illinois State Police? They did not respond, but the Dixon Police said, let us know if they don't handle this Pop-Tarts, because we will. Nobody's putting mustard on their Pop-Tarts in Illinois. So at least I think, look, I'm not a fan of big government per se.
No, but when you're desecrating a Pop-Tart, okay, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks I'm nuts. There is a topping for Pop-Tarts that oh boy, you're looking at me wrong. We'll get into this tomorrow. This is important.
No, but
This is important.
Okay, yeah, I'm
tomorrow.
Glenn Beck.